Welcome to episode 26 of AuthentiCity FM. I'm Phil Corrali here with my friends, colleagues, and fellow local gov optimists, Corey Spiegel and Mike Sable. If you've been tuning in, you know that our last series was all about disruption, living through it, working through it, leading when nothing feels solid. Our next focus area has pivoted to resilience for my fellow West Wing fans out there, the proverbial what's next moment. This isn't the kind of resilience that hardens you. Rather, it's the kind that keeps you intact while you're still figuring it out. Today, we're talking with someone living in the midst of that space, a first-time city manager, longtime city management professional, navigating a new role in a town she already knows. Big challenges, big opportunities, and all the disruption that comes with stepping into the chair everyone assumes you've got completely figured out. A career spent in California, she's leading a growing, vibrant city with its own music video. We'll talk about that later. Wineries worth the visit, and a name that just makes you smile. She's in year 2 as West Coast Regional Vice President for ICMA, a weaver, a pragmatist, a purpose-driven nerd who finds resilience in flip-flops and positive moments with the dogs in her life. Let's get to know Elisa Cox, city manager for Rancho, Cucamonga, California. Stick around. We're just getting started. All right, Elisa, tell us all about you that I didn't already say. That was a trick so that you couldn't just roll through your resume. We don't want to hear about your resume. We want to hear about you. We want to hear about your reason for being in this profession and all of the fun things that you do. And then we're just going to roll. It's going to be a great conversation. We're looking forward to it. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Phil. I'm going to have to start off, though, with the Elisa conversation.
Oh, God. I even wrote it down. I'm sorry.
And a few years ago, I just decided, I'm sure I walked around just being like, yep, that's fine. Yep, that's fine. But I will give you the cheat version is that most people just turn around and then call me E, and it makes their job so much easier. Yeah. So I think the question was something around, how did I end up here? It's all started with the swimming pool for me. I love to swim. I was on the swim team and I would watch the junior lifeguards during practice when I was practicing doing their training and learning their things. And I got to be the age where you could be a junior lifeguard and the city had canceled the program. And my mom said, well, if you want it, you need to go ask for it. And so I remember walking up. I'm probably 12, 13 years old at this point. The pool manager had long hair, the feathered earring, the Doc Martens with the red shorts. And, this was very intimidating. Now a great human in my life. Asking if I could be a junior lifeguard, which really translated to, can I volunteer at the pool and help him do with whatever else?
So we, as part of the introduction, and we know each other and we're friends. And so you have a new job that you have started recently. Tell everybody what it's like to go, if this is a community that you've been in before. Walk us through what that transition is like and kind of how did you come into this role?
Yeah, I've been with the city of Rancho Cucamonga. I'm going into my 10th year right now. It's joined in 2016. Something I always knew about myself was that I'm not a jumper. I like my roots. I like understanding the community as best as one can do. I was with my previous city full time for 11 years, but it was actually the community where I started as a junior lifeguard. And I've known for 3 or 4 years that the city manager was going to retire. I started there as a deputy city manager, which in California is the role below the assistant, which is the role below the city manager. When I joined, there was 3 deputy city managers. There was no assistant. And at some point, our city manager had said, I'm going to run an internal ACM recruitment. The point of this ACM role is really to have some years where somebody can prepare for the next seat. No guarantees that that's who the council will pick, but make sure that we're doing the best we can to provide the smoothest transition that there can be. And so it's been, jumping into the ACM role was just that immediate knowledge, knowing that I'm here to train for the next role. And it was actually when I applied to be ACM that my husband and I sat down and had that long, hard conversation of like, are we willing to do this? Because this is it's a team sport at the end of the day. If you don't have that person back at home that can back you up and understand when you come home and you've got nothing left to give, I think it makes things a lot harder. And so it's at that point that we had that conversation that this would be something that we would try for the two of us. And so it's been a training ground ever since. So my former city manager, great friend, great mentor, retired in December. So I'm going into my third month in the seat. And I will say I don't feel that I could have been any more prepared to step into it. But I also listened to my peers and my friends a lot. So I knew that there was going to be at least something that I couldn't have trained for, explained. And I keep waiting for what that big shoe is going to drop. And it's not wanting to say it out loud, but it's been a very natural transition. Aware of the politics, aware of what's going on in the development world. The thing, though, that wasn't prepared or aware for was that waking up the day after a council meeting and feeling like I had just run a marathon. Bone and muscle in my body just being exhausted and tired. That was my big surprise.
So I think it's unique that we get to talk to you at your 90-day mark, right? And the first time in a chair, knowing that you know the organization, but your role changes with the people who were your colleagues. And so what's one thing that you're really proud of, right? Because I think I couldn't tell you what my first 90 days were. It was more than a decade ago because as you accumulate time, you just kind of forget those little moments. So what is that thing that sticks out from your first 90 days that you're just so proud of?
It's a mixture of proud and gratefulness, but what we call our city manager team, which is myself, an assistant city manager, and 3 deputy city managers. We started meeting 30 minutes every morning, and it's just kind of this touch base every morning. Where are we going? What's going on in the organization? My team and I are all really pretty new in our positions. In fact, we are all new in our positions. One of my deputies has been a deputy for a number of years, but went from overseeing community programs to seeing administrative services. Another one of my deputies has been an assistant city manager for almost a decade, came in over administrative services and is now over development services. My assistant city manager was our fire chief, which shocked the whole organization when I went with that direction, and still is, but an amazing leader. And so learning the city side of things, because our fire is actually a separate fire district, but the city council and the fire board are one and the same. And the city, I serve as the chief appointing officer, and still overall CEO. And then my third DCM, this is her first time in that seat coming up from being our community services director. So, as much experience as we all bring to, the circle when we meet every morning, we also are physicians. And so together we are trying things on and figuring things out. And it's a really amazing group of humans who are willing to be vulnerable, who are willing to ask why, who are willing to do things through some trial and error, but with a lot of expertise backing them up. It's educated trial and error. And I'm just so proud of this group. And I'm also just very grateful to be going through this at this time with them.
So learning together is such a great way to start off in your role and their roles as well, because I think there's a forgiveness factor among that core group, particularly where you're all kind of looking at each other and saying, okay, we think we know the right answer. We're going to roll with it and we're going to see how it goes. And hopefully we've marched in the right direction. And so far, it seems like that's been going well. I think, a question that I have as it relates to that, and for each of the 4 of you really, is as you're now set into a new set of responsibilities, where are you finding yourself more vocal or interested in the direction of the organization, of the community, than maybe you were in those previous roles?
That's interesting. Because in some ways, I think I'm actually potentially, as bad as it might sound, less. I'm really trying to embrace the HPO model, the high performance organization model. Something that I was exposed to years ago now when I did leadership ICMA and went out to SCI. For me, going through that program was like, oh, here's a vernacular for the things that I have always felt. And I remember my dad giving me some great advice when I went. I think it was when I came to Rancho Cucamonga, and I was really concerned about going from such a small city to such a large city. And him telling me, like, you can't know everything. Your job is not to know everything. Your job is to help people get their resources and to help provide guidance and direction and connect the dots. But your job is not to know everything. And I rely on that often because if I think about trying to know everything and think about being able to make all the decisions for everybody everywhere, it gets incredibly overwhelming. And so I'm really trying to step into this world, and it takes me a lot of reminders sometimes, like, I don't have to be that subject matter expert. When I'm sitting down with that developer, I don't have to have that answer. I can remind that person that I have got a whole division of departments and humans that are excellent at what they do, and they are going to they know the development code inside and out. They understand the traffic requirements and the parking requirements. That's not my job. My job is to make sure that they have the resources that they need, that I've got enough information to be dangerous, that I can communicate this to the city council and the community, um, but to really empower them to be the masters of what we've hired them to do. And so in that regard, there's been a little bit more of less needing to make decisions. But I will say on the flip side of that, my need for information and is growing. Like I'm like, you make the decision, but I need to understand how you got there, why you got there, what were you relying upon to make this decision, and make sure that I can understand that and back that up and that we're on the same page. Which, as you all know, comes also back to making sure that we're clear on our why and what we're doing and how we're trying to accomplish making our community just a little bit better every single day.
So you talked about how all of you are new. And how did you go about working with the council and kind of redefining the strategic plan for your team and the operational plan for what you guys are working on as you build this new era?
Know that well, first off, I've got a great relationship with the city council right now. That's probably the benefit of being a new manager in a community that you've been in for 10 years. Um, but I but I wouldn't say that everything I'm doing is new. I'd say it's continuing to build upon what we've been doing in the organization for 10 to 20 years. We started with a Team RC program. It's got to be close to 20 years ago now, where we really started taking a hard look at what does our culture look like? What did we want employees' first day to be like when they come in? So there hasn't been a massive pivot, I wouldn't say, and because I've been with the organization as long as I have been, I was instrumental in many of the policies that are in place now. I was telling Phil last weekend, we bring babies to work, and my dogs were raised in City Hall, and so there's a lot of stuff that I've been able to put my fingerprints on and my touch and my influence. So it's not completely like ripping off a Band-Aid and doing something new. It's just kind of elusifying it a little bit more, where it's just got a little bit more of my touch. So I don't think there's been this huge shift necessarily for city council, maybe not this huge shift for the community, and just enough shift for the employees in the organization but not so much that they're feeling any more uncertainty and change than they were already going to feel with somebody new coming in at the top. At least that's my hope.
But uh, you said a couple of things I thought were interesting. So you participated in Leadership ICMA. You did the program. You talk about the HPO model. Kind of how has that shaped your evolution and approach to learning? And so, what are some of the benefits that you've gotten from having? I know that you have a deep network. Talk a little bit about what that means for you professionally.
So leadership ICMA was a game changer for me. I will say that leadership ICMA was my gateway drug into ICMA. My previous organization, I was very interested in things that I saw going on with ICMA, but my boss was not interested. Interested, strong word. I think she was very interested in being part of it, but did not feel that with our limited budget that was the best use of our resources for her, much less for me. And when I came to Rancho, it was like one of those things like, okay, go ahead and sign up for ICMA. And I signed up for ICMA, and a year later, I was like, that's a really expensive membership that I have signed up for. And I get a newsletter every couple of days. Like, I don't know if this is worth the money. Like, I was feeling pretty guilty about that. And the leadership ICMA came through an email, and it was closing in like 2 days. And I remember running down the hall to my boss's office and being like, can I do this? Would it be okay if I did this? And, him laughing at me as he does when I pull out what we call my better grader ideas, and signing off on it, getting my application in. And, I think 4 weeks later, I'm in Washington, D.C. meeting, my leadership ICMA class. And that was I think that was December of probably 2017. And we graduated in 2019. And of course, COVID hit in 2020. And so going through the program was amazing. Getting to know my people and working on my capstone was instrumental in some major changes that I've made in the organization, which we can come back to. But the part that I could have never foresaw was that when COVID hit and we were able to get together weekly and just vent, commiserate, encourage, support, like what a blessing that was in staying sane. It's one thing to be talking to the people that you work with every day about these things. It's a whole nother thing to be talking with people across the country that are dealing with same things, but in different ways or with different politics or, different particulars. And it was just a really, for me, it was just a game changer to have that support across the country. But if we jump back to our capstone project, I was on a team that was serving the city of Boulder, and Tanya was there at the time as deputy city manager. So it was meeting Jane and Tanya at that time that really got me, that first struck the idea of maybe someday I'd join the board. But our team was working on studying evaluations and, are there other ways to do evaluations and merit pay and all of these things. And I am a recovering HR director. I did start in recreation. The journey was wide and broad and has been very interesting. And I was a preacher of you do the evaluations, you put everything in the evaluations, and I can, mimic the attorney's directions like word for word. And uh, when I was in my previous city, they would tease me about being the evaluation queen, and I would just harp on getting evaluations done and so on and so forth. And I walked out of the capstone project and I was like, we're never doing another evaluation again. The data through the studies, like it's not there. It does not increase performance. It does not build a better culture. The first thing that people go to is the last page. How much money am I going to get? And if they're not getting the increase that they think they're going to get, all of the great words that you spent time and effort putting into there, if you put the time and effort in there, have been forgotten. 9 times out of 10, evaluations are late. If you're lucky, it's a month or two, but we've all been there. You get to a point where it's a year later and evaluations haven't been done. So we took a lot of that, some of the things that Boulder was already doing and then expanded upon with some of the information that we had studied and learned and switched to development plans, which we call our MAPS, My Action Plan, because it actually starts with the employee taking a review and a hard look at what did they learn this past year? What do they want to learn this upcoming year? And how do we map that out so that they are continually learning and growing? How do we have conversations early and often when things are going well and when they're not going well? And how do we have those touch points throughout the year so you're not just keeping that supervisor file with all the information in it and now you're going to put it all into the evaluation? And it's been great. We went from something like 47, 48% response rate on evaluations to 100% on the development plans. We moved them all so that everybody's doing them at the same time every year, instead of on anniversaries and whatnot. And we took the merit pay out of the whole situation. And now if you get your map in and it's done on time, you will get your 5% bump on the salary range, and it's just not even a part of the conversation. And if you're on a performance improvement plan, because we are working on just having the right communication tools at the right time, then you don't get your bump on the merit, but you have that opportunity to work yourself back up and have some great coaching and conversations in the meantime to hopefully get you back to a place that is coexists well with the rest of the department and organization. So it's been a journey, but I would say that's another thing that I'm really proud of that I learned through Leadership ICMA and all of that experience, and was able to come back and bring back to my organization.
It's such an interesting point. If I can stick with this evaluation conversation for a minute, because every organization I have been a part of has talked and talked and talked about how much we hate this process, and nobody gets anything out of it. And HR always comes back and centers the conversation. But you never know, folks. If we need to let somebody go, we're going to need to have this in the file so that it shows. And it's performative, just in case we have to fire you someday.
Right. And how many
It's not
employees are we planning on firing, right? I'm not saying how many do we actually have to, but how many are we planning? That's not our goal.
right.
Our goal is to develop our employees. We've really tried to take that approach of we're not setting up policies for the one-off that's done the thing wrong. We want to set up our policies for the 99% of the employees that are, doing things right. And then let's just deal with the one-offs when they happen. HR/city manager hat say, just deal with it in the moment. Don't let it fester.
Yeah. Well, and I
Document
think
your conversations.
it's exactly like these are the things that hold us back, right? That keep us from comfortably saying it's really okay to try something different. You've got these sunk costs that the organization has spent time and resources and effort to create the greatest evaluation form. And inevitably it sucks. Nobody likes it. Nobody finds value in it. Nobody enjoys it. It's a process. Everybody hates it. And so
And you're being evaluated differently depending on who your supervisor is and what department you're in.
Right.
And yeah.
Well, and the evolving workforce, right? What are people deriving from what the supervisor is doing with them? Are they deriving a great deal of value from a once a year sit down while flipping through a 15-page long evaluation that's talking about maybe something they don't even know about? Or are you building out? I may steal this my action plan thing because I love that.
I've got documents.
concept.
I can send them all to you.
It's just if you're sitting down with the employee and the goal on both sides is for success, for that employee to find success, value, and reinforcement in their career, and the same is true on the employer side, well, what an amazing opportunity to grow together, right? And I think those are the kinds of touch points that so frequently we're afraid to disrupt, not to tie back into last month, but it's a disruption to say we're not going to do evaluations anymore. What? Well, how could we not do that? That's just impossible. So, for everybody out there listening, it's possible to not do them and to find great success outside of the evaluation process. I'm going to make my HR and deputy manager listen to this episode in particular. Thank you very much. This was unscripted even.
I think it's great that you brought that up. We went away from single rater Likert scale based reviews probably in 2015, 2016. Because I recognized, Phil and I have had an off camera joke for a couple of days now, that I'm a very hard grader. Like, that's just who I am as a person. And so your score might be a 3 or a 4, depending on how my mood was that day and how crazy the day was. And that's not fair to literally any employee. And so we went down to a single page work plan for the whole year. What were your department goals? What were your individual goals? And then what were your professional development goals? And so it was very much without the fancy acronym. It was very simple. And then the reviews were maybe 2 or 3 pages. Here's what the accomplishments were. Here are the next area of focuses. And so I think the message to those following along with the podcast is if you're still using a Likert scale, especially a single rater Likert scale, please don't. Please leave it back in the 20th century where it belongs. And it's not about disruption. It's about redefining what works best in the modern era. We can let go of things that don't work. And I think that's important for all systems. I mean, we did talk a lot about disruption. We're starting to talk about resilience. And part of resilience is letting go of the things that don't work anymore.
And I don't think you can have resilience without that disruption, right? Like you have to go through those things to know what's going to make you stronger or help you push your limits past where they started. Just like exercise or anything like that, being a swimmer, the first time somebody jumps into the pool, they're not going to be great at it, right? That's going to take some time to learn and practice, and the more you practice, the stronger you get, and the stronger you get, the further you can go. And I think resilience is that same idea. You have to go through it. You have to understand it. You have to learn from it in order to continue to build your tolerance for resilience, or maybe it's not your tolerance as much. Maybe it's the tolerance for disruption because you're resilient to be able to keep moving on and keep trudging forward.
So that felt like a perfect segue to this question I was going to ask next, which is like, you have a hard job, but you have a lot of people who depend on you. It adds a certain level of stress, and there's some things that come with the territory of just being in the job that you're in. How do you de-stress? Like, what do you do outside of the workplace that sort of centers you and grounds you and gives you, kind of refills your cup and gives you a little bit added resilience?
I'm still working on developing that, and it changes year by year and time availability. Right now, I'm not quite where I would like to be. The big thing I'd really like to be adding in, and I've been trying to work on for a few years, is consistent strength training. It's just, I can get through it for a week or two. Maybe I make it to 3 and then something will happen. But over the last few years, I've had a really big focus on sleep and sleep quality and making that a focus of kind of everything. My friends that have known me for a long time, mostly outside of work, know that by 10 o'clock, I am beyond a pumpkin. But it's great when I get to see you all at conferences and stuff because almost everything's on the East Coast, and all of a sudden I can stay up till midnight. It never happens here. So there's been, I've been really, really focusing on that, and how am I going to get my best amounts of sleep and make time that I am able to recharge that way. I really do relax in water. So whether it's a bath, whether it's the hot tub, whether it's, watching, the ocean, those are all things that just fill me up. We've got 2 absolutely insane dogs. And, so getting to go on walks, and when we get to do our family walks together, those are always really nice. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get yourself out the door.
Yeah.
But once we're out the door, it's pretty great. And, just getting to spend time with good friends and laughing and when I say good friends, my husband is the forefront of that. I've mentioned before, I mean, he is my biggest cheerleader. He is the one that reminds me that I can do things when they seem too hard. He's the one that is currently and always just, helping me grow, helping me expand in all of the things. And because it's jumping into my head, so it must mean it's fun and important. I really love a good game of Rummy Cube. And we've got 2 sets of friends that we will regularly play Rummy Cube with. So I don't know if that dates me too much or what, but Rummy Cube has been our game, and we even have a little travel version. So when we're traveling and sitting at the airport or something, we'll pull it out and play around a bit. So.
The podcast is called AuthentiCity because people give authentic answers, and that is a perfect answer that it doesn't surprise me. I'm glad that you love it, and I'm glad you share that with our listeners. So thank you.
I'm gonna sneak in before Phil tries.
Yeah.
So sleep, because I'm gonna go down this rabbit hole. 2 of the 3 of your podcast co-hosts are fanatical about their sleep. One of us, not so much, probably sleep deprived most days. So, what tips can you give to our friend Phil and all of our listeners about when you made that a priority? What did you do and what have you learned?
Yeah, lots of studying, listening, experimenting. I'd say some of the big ones were, cutting off caffeine after lunch. So any caffeine I was having was before lunch. Alcohol is a huge sleep disruptor, and so if I'm having a glass of wine or something, that is cut off at least 2 hours before I'm going to go to bed. Various supplements, like some I was taking in the morning, like fish oil, that actually can help you sleep at night. So that's at night now. Magnesium. I take a magnesium bath almost every night. I get very irritated. I have to wash my hair and miss my bath. See, those are probably the big ones. The other one is sleeping in a cold room. And I've even heard that there's like these air conditioning type units that you can put into your bed to make your bed like incredibly cold before you get into it. I'm perfectly fine with it being as cold as it can be without, having to supplement the coldness. But those are probably the big ones. And then I then timing it, and it's when I really took the focus on sleep that the strength training kind of went away because I was like, I'm going to do this 7 to 8 hours. Like it's going to be a non-negotiable for me. But that means my morning is much more compressed and getting ready for work. And that's also my best time for working out. So um, as much as we're on a 410, which is lovely because Fridays is an uninterrupted catch-up day, the 7 to 6 hours is also a really long of working hours to. So I've got some mental chatter about that. And is it okay to come into work at 8 o'clock? Because I know I'm going to likely not stop working till 7 and I'm going to be doing some stuff on Friday. Um, I still got to work through that mental chatter to see what's gonna sit right and help overall.
I want to talk for 2 seconds about sleep. Um, yes, I'm very bad at it. I always have been. And I think somewhat, I kind of wear that hat of, I've always been a bad sleeper. That's just how it is. And so one thing that I have learned, with the conversations that we've had, Corey and I and Mike and I, and now today is just because something is true, don't convince yourself of it forever, right? It may be true at some point, but there are things that you can, should, and must do in order to break that truth into something else. It really it forces sometimes a difficult step or something that feels uncomfortable in the time, but to be able to find it in yourself to say, no, this is more important than a doom scroll. This is more important than sitting up and binging another episode of a show. This is more important than letting my mind spin out of control over an issue that took place that I have no control over anymore and now have to move on from. And those are not always easy to do, but it is something that I personally have struggled with and worked through and try to get better at. But I think that is true of so many people, especially in disruptive times, right? It's just you put yourself into the place in the city manager's chair of sometimes walking into battle first, and that isn't always the best place for you when things are hard. So that was one thing. The other thing I wanted to mention is strength training. I'm right there with you. This year, I committed that I was going to start a consistent strength training regimen. We're 5 weeks into the year. I'm still going, but I'm working with a trainer. And I would just like to point out for the record that if you are of a certain age and strength training is not something that you have generally done consistently, and the trainer that you are working with is, in my case, 25 years younger than me, don't do everything that they tell you to do because they don't know that this addled 40, almost 46-year-old body cannot do that stuff that much. I got home yesterday morning. I do this at 5:45 on Friday mornings. And I had to I had to sit in a chair with my head between my knees, essentially, to keep myself from passing out 20 minutes after the workout ended. So, like, there's some things I got to change, I got to advocate for, but it's a wonderful thing, and I feel great eventually afterwards. Not so much today. I'm a bit sore, but good on you for trying, and we'll compare notes. We'll see how long I keep this up.
I will say you're 5 weeks ahead of me. So I'm still in the putting the intention out there, and hopefully we will get there soon.
Don't
My
think
travel
that I
schedule
don't try to
doesn't
talk
help.
myself out of it every time I'm in the car driving there. Like, oh, you still could turn around. Oh, you still could. Nope, can't turn around. You're there
Yeah, I
now.
love the part about having the trainer though, because once I've like paid for it, or you can't turn the car around on your after you're already there because you're paying for that session one way or the other.
One way or the
That
other.
guilt is huge. Like,
Yep.
get me there.
All right. So one of the bits that we do on the podcast is that I have to do the Victor Cardness, right? Please like us and subscribe and say nice things about us or tell us that we're terrible, but just give us some feedback. But we also let our guests ask questions of us. What questions do you have of us, or what's something that you're kind of wondering about? We pledge to answer. It might be poor answer, but we're going to answer. What do you have for us?
So I'm going with a little more fun version, I hope. But my favorite interview question goes between two, but we're going to go with the superpowers today. What is your professional superpower and why?
Mike, sounds like a great answer for you to start
So
off with.
I will say I kind of gave this answer. So Serena Breland was on the podcast and she asked us some pretty hard questions, and I answered it this way, right? So I'm the youngest of 4 kids. My siblings are quite a bit older than I am, and so I was able to I might joke like I was always brought places, and so I could reshape and reconfigure who I had to be based on the audience I was in. And so I'm incredibly adaptable. And so you can plot me in an organization in any seat and I can figure out a way to be successful. And so my superpower in an organization is just very quickly figuring out where I can be most useful and most productive. And so I had a job where I was there for 7 years. I had 6 jobs while I was there. And you just get, so I'm really good at adapting and kind of discerning pretty quickly what we need to do and what we need. So I'm a great activator. I'm a great, I can adapt really well. I can innovate pretty quickly. And so I kind of have that blend of like, I'm a puzzle piece that can kind of be very quickly used. I'm like a utility infielder in baseball. Every team needs somebody that can play every position. And so that's kind of me. So that's how I would answer it. Corey?
So adaptability is like in the basement part of my Gallup strengths, which is funny. I never thought about that till now. But I did have a boss call me mysterious once because I could blend in pretty much anywhere. And that for me looks like individualization. But my actual superpower is strategy. And I am a student of people. I love watching people. I love studying people. I see patterns that most people don't see. Like that's my real gift in life. And so I can typically predict something about 3 steps ahead. If I have a general lay of the land, who's involved and what the desired outcome is or isn't, and maneuver my way right through it.
Okay, I guess I'm the last one here. So I think there's a few things that I'm going to mention. And the one that I'll land on, I'm not sure if it's a superpower, but it's something that I do. I think I have a pretty significant ability to discern. So to see the emotion in the space, to see the anxiety or the interest or the fun among the people in the room, sometimes before they see it or they even know that it exists. And so in big meetings, I can kind of pick up on the way that people are responding and help other people to see how they're responding to it. Um, that leads me to be somewhat of a cheerleader. So I can wear the colors of my community better than anyone, and I enjoy that. It's kind of a fun thing for me, and I've always kind of taken on that mantle as I've gone from place to place. That now this is the best place in the world because I'm going to tell you all the reasons why, and that has been something that has been good for me overall. But I would say probably um, the thing that surprises people the most when I have a one-on-one conversation with staff or with even my elected officials is how I can put on the costume. I can wear the mantle of city manager. I can walk into a room and feel uh, pretty confidently. But behind the scenes, there are 400 kinds of anxieties that are pushing me in 400 different directions all at the same time. And I don't show them, to the point at which I've had conversations with the woman who is now my deputy manager, where I've said, I cannot tell you a day where I have not been anxious about a council meeting, about a face-to-face, about whatever. And she's like, you're anxious? I would never have guessed. Like, like I would never have thought you didn't think you knew how to do that. And I said, I don't think I know how to do that most days, but it's sometimes the role that I find myself having to take because somebody else isn't going to do it if I don't do it. And so whether that's a good or a bad superpower, there are arguments either direction. It is one that I think that I possess and can execute fairly well.
I think I think it's a really interesting one, and especially in the world of talking about resilience. Um, how many times are we as managers showing up and making it look seamless and making it look easy and making it look like we know everything that's about to happen, right? But the reality, how do we normalize, especially for those that are aspiring to be in the seats that we're in, or maybe they don't aspire, maybe they're exploring or curious, and how often do they say, well, I can't do that because I don't know everything, or I can't do that because I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm anxious, or I'm scared. And, how do we somewhat, I mean, I can answer the question, but I can also ask it, right? Like, how do we change that messaging so that it is okay to let others know when you're anxious about something, or that it is okay to let people know that you're walking into that room totally have no idea what's going to happen, but you're also doing it at the same time because you've got the 25 years of experience backing you, and you know that one way or another, by staying true to who you are and who the community is, that you're going to walk out of the room just fine. And there's I don't know what that word or that skill is, and maybe it just is resiliency, but how important it is to have those conversations with deputies, with our analysts, with people that are just curious about the profession, and sharing how often we do what we do because we've got a strong foundation, but not because we actually know what's going to happen in the moment.
It's if we can pull on it just a little bit further, I think, I've seen um, Mike makes fun of me. I'm on LinkedIn a little bit. And I would say that recently, particularly, I have seen a lot of posts from managers around the country who have articulated that it is their primary responsibility to not let their staff know how difficult things are, that it is their role to be the shield against all badness for their staff. And I don't know if it's just the times that we're in, or it's generational, or it's um, something that we're saying out loud to kind of reinforce it. But it is so unhealthy generally to be this this person who just simply keeps all the bad from anybody else, because the reality is that assumes that we're doing all of the things to make everything good. And that is just simply not true. We don't have the ability to be everything to everyone all of the time and still be alive. Like, there is just no ability to check off all of those boxes. And I think somehow unmasking the fact that it is okay to be overwhelmed by something. It is okay to not have the answer. And in fact, it is relieving to the organization in many ways to be the person who says, I don't know either, but we're going to work it out together. We're going to come up with something because we're all smart people and we can do that. I think it's just it's a step that maybe we're getting more comfortable with, but we have some work to do.
Makes me think about that phrase, we're stronger, we're better together, right? When we each bring those talents to the table, that we'll figure out that situation. We'll work our way through it. But I recently had somebody tell me that I shouldn't cry so much. I don't think that I'm sitting there in my office like bawling my eyes out and hysterical, because that's not the case. Just as a person who feels a lot, if I have to get up and talk about that's something that I find that is hard, or that is disheartening, or that I think is just a truly sad existence in the world. That's so for me to never cry or to tear up like that would be so unauthentic to me, and to not have those emotions. And I'm grateful to be able to work in a world at a time where, at least in some communities, hopefully the one that I'm in, not hopefully, I know about the one that is acceptable, that is okay, and that we can model that. I also know that if I was to go to another community, that might be a completely condemning behavior. And so I'll put that just plug out there for people, like, find the communities where you can be yourself, because I think that's just super important.
So I'm so glad you said that. The two things that were kind of rolling around in my head as both of you were talking was, city management is the loneliest team sport ever, right? Like, and we all came up in a similar era. I remember a PIO, as we were prepping for different things. You will not cry. You are not allowed to cry. You must stay stoic, right? Like, you must be a stone at the podium. And that's probably a decade-ish ago, but that was pretty consistent in the first decade of my career too. And I think that's the power of the generations that are coming into leadership now, saying, I don't want to be that, because one, it's not normal, and we will come back to the word normal at some point in this podcast. But it's also disingenuous, right? It's not who you are authentically. And the more we can model being real human beings who care about other real human beings, I think is important, more so now than probably any point in our careers.
It's hard though, and I think there is it's important to keep working at it, and it's important to find yourself in vulnerable positions sometimes with your most trusted team members, right? I'll tell a story that's a little bit perhaps embarrassing. I don't know if it's embarrassing. It's not. It's complicated for me, but we have my leadership team pretty much fully turned over in the last less than 3 years. And so I've got this brand new group of people. They're all people that I've hired and brought in, and we are working through that. It's not simple, it's not seamless, but it's something that we've been working on. And so we've been working with um, a consultant who has been doing some really great, deep work with us, talking about our critical strengths and how those align with one another, and really kind of forcing a thoughtful discussion among us on how we need to support one another. And we were in the last session of the year, back in 2025, and it was for any number of reasons a difficult day for me. And I had to share last, and as everybody is sharing, like, I'm sensing like this build in me that I'm like, please don't ask me to talk because I'm not going to talk very well right now. And he sensed it too and asked me to talk, and I just absolutely fell apart. Absolutely fell apart. And it was one of those galvanizing moments for us as a team that they were in a safe space. I was in a safe space with them, and they admittedly didn't know what to do. I didn't either. And we kind of came through that together. And it's been an interesting, I've seen an interesting shift one on one for them to have witnessed me crying like that because it humanized. And I'm fairly emotive at work, but that was something that I don't think ever would have expected. And I think I'm not saying people need to replicate this situation, but I am saying that when there's the ability to know you as the manager, as a human, there is an ability perhaps to understand what you're dealing with yourself, and trying to carry on their behalf or on the behalf of the board or on behalf of the community as a whole. And it gives them insight into how to help because it is lonely. It is a very lonely team sport.
All right, I'm going to transition because I appreciate everybody sharing. But so you have a really cool kind of job. You don't get paid for it, but you serve on the ICMA executive board. You represent the West Coast states. One of the jobs of the role is to go around to all of the other states in your area and talk to them and kind of be out there. And then you also get to do sort of set the future for the professional association. So two-part question: most fun or obscure state that you've been to or conference that you've been to, and then give us a little preview of sort of what's ICMA up to and what are you looking forward to do as you're sort of in your peak of your power as sort of this on your almost halfway through your tenure, sort of what's something on the horizon that our listeners might want to know about at ICMA?
So here's this weird thing about being the California representative at ICMA is that California, and I roll all the jokes you want, California is just different, right? Our state association is a hub, I would say, of a number of management associations. And so we don't have our own conference. We don't charge membership dues. If you're a member of ICMA, you're automatically a member. The Managers Department, which is part of our state association. We've got a management foundation. We've got a Northern and Southern association. We just are flush of organizations, plus all of the affiliate groups. So we serve as kind of that hub. And also being a large, dense state, I feel like one of the things that I feel like I miss out on is that oftentimes you hear so many other people knowing what's going on in so many other states, and there's been many times where I have felt isolated and that I don't necessarily know and understand that. And because how the regions have traditionally been set up, there's just less states in the West Coast because there are so many people um, in California, really, but throughout that. So which kind of leads into the realignment that we spent the last year and years before that working towards. And that really excites me because that region's going to grow and there will be more places to go and travel to. So I've been to Washington, I've been to Oregon, I have not been to Alaska, and I am so excited that Katie has joined our board, except for the small thing that I will never get to go to Alaska now because she's the Alaskan rep. I mean, I'll make it there someday, somehow, some way, but just probably not through my board term on ICMA. The other thing that I'm really excited and looking forward to is that we have finally gotten to a place where we're working on the strategic plan for the organization, which is another thing that has been discussed for years and years. And I think it ultimately ended up coming at a great time because it has come after a time of great disruption. And so now it's time for us to really pull on what's going to make this organization resilient and who do we want to be for the next 10, 20, 25 years. I don't think strategic plans have life probably much past really 5 to 10 years, but really help setting that direction for what comes next, because there is a lot. And I think I heard somebody say earlier, you can't be all things to all people. And so what is the most important parts about what we do and how we do them? And how do we, as policymakers, which is very different than being a practitioner, and so this is a great experience in thinking like a policymaker. How do we give that overall policy guidance and then let the staff do what the staff do best, which is come up with the how to get that policy accomplished? So I think those are really two great things. I have to say, I can be a bit of a disruptor myself, and I'm really grateful to be on the board at a time of such change and such hard decisions, because I think for me that's really meaningful to be able to influence um, when a big shift is going on and happening. And how do we maybe take some different looks at what we've traditionally always done, or maybe not even always done, but what has been happening of recent, and how do we help make sure that we have all the voices at the table, that we are setting up good guidelines and guardrails, and continuing the ongoing success of helping the local government profession, because this is a really awesome profession. For all the challenges that have been discussed, like there is nothing else in the world I would rather be doing. Like this, just I was talking with somebody the other day, and it's like this is you would never know all the things that you would get to do as a city manager or city management. Like it is really one of those professions that you kind of get to see behind the scenes of all the other professions, and you don't know who you're going to be meeting with from one day to the next and what kind of influence. We're building the first well, we're not building it, but we will be the terminus for the first high-speed rail in the Americas. Like, how crazy and insane is that? And I was explaining to somebody the other day that who knew that the FRA had rules that you have to run your train system for 6 months as if you had passengers on it before it can actually open up to put passengers on it, because they want to test it in all sorts of climates and situations. And, somebody came up with that magic number, that 6 months of running rails. But it's just such a cool, cool profession. And, so whatever I can do to help um, support it going into the future and support my community going into the future, I mean, this is just kind of the area that I can geek out on for days and days.
So you and Phil were recently together because the annual conference is in California this year. So give us a little sneak peek of what kind of the vibe for Long Beach is, because I know the biggest conversations last year in Tampa were about planning the adult day at Disneyland, which I'm super excited for.
Well, so uh, I will just say a couple of things. It this was our conference education planning committee meeting, which was a little bit smaller group than we would typically have. This is my third year serving on that committee, and weather got in the way for a lot of folks getting out to California, especially those who were in the eastern parts and central parts of the country. It was just impossible to get out, or there was a lot of concern about getting back. So not as big of a crowd in terms of the planning, the education committee, but a really great set of conference sessions, I think, that people can look forward to in Long Beach in October. Long Beach is just lovely. The convention center is going to be a lot of fun for people. It's big, so bring your walking shoes from the door to where the general sessions are. I did not clock it, but it sure felt like it was about a quarter to a third of a mile. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to connect, learn, and enjoy what is a beautiful city of about 450,000. It was my first time going to Long Beach. They have their own airport, which I did not fly into because I would have to connect from somewhere else. So I flew into LAX, which I kind of enjoy anyway. But two airports that are easy to get to from virtually anywhere. And the host committee is just just so excited. And I think that's where all the real work happens. Um, from the standpoint of the opportunities for connection and to experience the place. I think that's the best part about ICMA conferences is you get to experience the place with all of some of your favorite people. So
I will say, Phil is not local because he just said he loves going to LAX, and anybody that's local does everything they can to avoid LAX. So I would
people rolled their eyes at me when I said that. I was like, look,
absolutely take the layover to go into Long Beach. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
I have to fly out of O'Hare, so I am used to. I just felt like LAX was more fun than O'Hare, which I guess is a bad bar to set overall.
It may be, but I can't tell you how many layovers I will take to avoid having to go to LAX. To be fair, a lot of that is the traffic to get to and from LAX. And then over the last, decade or so, the construction that's been going on in LAX, getting ready for World Cup and LA 28 and beyond. But yeah, it's a beast in its of itself. You ask me what's going on in Long Beach, I'm like, there's sun, there's flip-flops, there's sands, there's ocean. And while it's not right on the ocean, it is certainly close enough. I'm actually excited to see and experience the conference in that larger space. Generally, when we go out there for our state conferences, we are just in the main hall of conference rooms. And so I'm excited to see it expanded and have that additional space. I agree with Phil. The host committee has done an amazing job of putting things together. It's going to be a treat, as every conference is. And at the end of the day, yes, October we should have some beautiful weather, but we get to see all of our people, and that for me is just, you can put me anywhere because I'm going to be excited to see almost anywhere. I'm going to be excited to see the people, whatever conference it is. This one I actually get to drive to, which very rarely happens. And we're really excited to host everybody in Southern California.
Well, we can't wait. I think I know a handful of us have submitted to be presenters. I don't know how the secret sauce gets made as to who gets picked, but hopefully that you'll be able to see us in person and presenting. You said LA 28. It's also Winter Olympics time, so I encourage people to watch. When you talked about crying earlier, I cry at every Olympics. There's going to be some moment where I'll be a puddle sitting on the couch watching the Olympics. So I look forward to that. We're wrapping up on this episode. One of the other bits that we do on this is we want to give our appreciation and thanks to you for being willing to do this. Time zones are different, so it's always a bit of a challenge, but we appreciate your flexibility. But we want to give you the last word. Unlimited time, kind of thoughts on the profession, thoughts on anything that you think is important. The floor is yours.
I want to express my appreciation to the three of you. This podcast came around for me at just a pivotal time. It started when I knew I would be city manager soon. And it was just one of those things that every episode, especially at the beginning, but all of them, I would gain something, I would get something, and it would just kind of reaffirm, like, I don't know if it was so much reaffirm, like, I can do this, but it was just like, this is where I want to be, and these are the kind of people that I want to be around, and this is why I do this. And there are a vast number of peoples and approaches to city management, but to find like-minded people that are willing to be authentic, that are willing to be vulnerable, and still show up as leaders is a brave place to be, right? I mean, it is much easier to stand on top and to yell the directives and to just say, I know what's best, so don't question me. And so I'm just incredibly appreciative to you for the timing that all of this came out. I'm a big fangirl. I can't wait for all of your merch because I will, have pieces of probably all of it. And continually sharing the clips and sharing and encouraging people to listen. And just beyond honored to get to be on the podcast. Like, that's just a very cool, exciting nerd girl thing to start my Saturday with. So thank you for what you're doing. This profession, like I said, it's amazing what we get to do and what we get to see and how we get to influence. And it's just one that I feel very grateful to have found and loved so much, and just be able to influence my little corner of the world just a little bit better every single day. That's my goal, at least, my hope. So, and I see that in the three of you and the people that you bring on to this podcast. So thank you for what you're doing. Keep doing with what you're doing. Um, I'm always excited when a new one drops.
Well, I appreciate that you say nice things about us. We don't know what we're doing. We just knew that we wanted to do something fun and interesting, and you are fun and interesting. So it has been just great having you. We knew, when you kind of pulled together, like, well, who should we talk to? You were at the top of that list. It takes a little while to get to the order of operations, but you have been. I didn't know you prior to maybe like a year and a half ago. It has been just a great joy to get to know you and to have you on this. And I'm glad you're in the role you're in. I'm glad you're doing the work that you're doing. You're among local government nerds, so like we're family. This is kind of how this works.
Well, I think that's it for this episode, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for continuing to follow, like, comment, share your feedback, positive, negative, whatever you're feeling. We want to hear it. We're always thrilled to engage and always thrilled to have the opportunity to have great conversations with our colleagues and our friends. And we're looking forward to continuing that. So we'll see you next time.